There's limited fighting already on the northern Israeli border, and I wonder, what is your message to Hezbollah and its backer, Iran?
Don't.
What is your message to Iran in this moment?
Don't.
Don't. That's President Joe Biden's Iran deterrent strategy at work, seen there right after the October 7th attack, and then again on Friday, right before Iran's barrage of missile and drone strikes on Israel. This is a stark contrast to former President Donald Trump, who back in 2018 tweeted out, "Never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer the consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious." To discuss, let's welcome in Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Congressman. So the only word we've heard from Biden publicly is don't. That was on Friday. Yet we heard from the former president this weekend. What do you make of the fact that we haven't heard more from our current president?
Well, it's good to be with you this morning. What I make of it is what I make of this entire Biden presidency. Joe Biden is the master of disaster. Everything has gone wrong under this president. You now have the Iranians who are violently going after the state of Israel, who seem to have no ability to be checked. And the only response is one word. That's simply not good enough. It is time for the Biden administration to reverse course, to adopt all of the sanctions and all of the policies and all of the posture of the Trump administration, because it actually had Israel, it had the Iranians in a box. It had the Middle East in a lot safer place. It had the Israelis and other Arab nations actually moving towards peace in the Middle East, which I thought was the goal of every American. We put ourselves in this situation simply because the president of the United States, first, is weak, and number two, he's really nowhere to be seen on the national stage. Mm-hmm. That is not the image of leadership that the American people are looking for. We had an image of leadership with President Trump, and we definitely need that back in the White House.
Yeah, we are clearly on the cusp of something much bigger in the Middle East. Yet yesterday, John Kirby was asked if this conflict in the Middle East has already escalated to a wider war, and this is his response to that. Take a listen.
A lot of people watched what happened in the skies over the Middle East overnight, and they are wondering this morning, has this now escalated into a wider war?
I don't think there's any reason that it needs to.
But has it? Are we now in the midst of a wider war?
The president doesn't believe that it needs to move in that direction whatsoever, Kristen.
So, Congressman, that was a yes or no question. He didn't answer that. What do you make of that?
What I make of it is that John Kirby is indicative of the fecklessness of this administration, starting with Joe Biden making its way to Tony Blinken, the very worst Secretary of State that this nation has ever seen. It doesn't matter what the president thinks. What matters is what's actually happening on the ground, or should I say, what's happening in the air. Couple that with the fact that Joe Biden's terrible exit from Afghanistan took away the Bagram airfield, which would have given us a much more significant ability to deter these type of attacks in the Middle East from the Iranians. Third part is they bragged when they left Afghanistan, talking about we didn't need Bagram airfield. We had over the horizon capability. Well, now that's proven to be an abject lie. John Kirby should be ashamed of himself, but he is paid to be a liar for this administration. Their terrible foreign policy has led us to the precipice of World War III. And the only hope to avoid that is that Benjamin Netanyahu and other leaders in the Middle East find a way to bring détente back to the situation with the Iranians.
Just about 15 seconds left. I want to ask you about this, a big day for the former president. I want to pivot to New York, where Trump's New York criminal trial begins today, starting with that jury selection. So the jury questionnaire being used does not ask who they voted for in the last presidential election, but it does ask if they've attended Trump rallies or follow him on social media, or even if they get their news from Newsmax. That's one of the questions on there. I think this says a lot about the bias against Trump in New York, where more than 90% voted for Biden in 2020. Just about 15 seconds. What do you make of this?
What I find it to be is that the New York system of justice is politically motivated and politically biased against President Trump. This is a disaster for a democratic republic like the United States, where justice is supposed to be blind. I don't expect this judge or this DA to try to actually do the right thing under the law. So my plea is to the people of Manhattan that may sit on this trial. Please do the right thing for this country. Everybody's allowed to have their political viewpoints, but the law is supposed to be blind and no respecter of persons. This is a trash case. There is no crime here. And if there is any potential for a verdict, they should vote not guilty.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll have much more on this historic trial with Judge Napolitano after the break. Stay with us.